I'm here with James Spencer, who's chairman of the Clan Owners Club, with his very yellow 1972 Clan Crusader. But it's not the Clan Owners Club stand, it is...
It's the stand of the Roots Archive Centre Trust, of which I am also a trustee.
Okay, excellent. Clan Crusader had an imp engine.
It did, yes.
Other than that, I don't know much about it. So how did it all come about?
Okay, well, the Clan Crusader was the brainchild of some Ex-Lotus employees, Paul Hassauer and Brian Luff. They, in the early 1970s, decided they wanted to produce a sports car, and with the aid of Ron Payne and John Frayling, the designer, they came up with the Clan Crusader. John Frayling designed the Buck. That the Clan Crusader was born. They were offered a factory unit by the Washington Development Corporation in the early 1970s.
Washington, Tyne and Wear, North East?
Yes,
okay.
Washington, Tyne and Wear, where the new town was being built.
Right.
And they took the factory and production started, and the first cars rolled off the production line in 1971. Unfortunately, the early 1970s were a time of industrial strife, and with the 3-day week, the miners' strike, the introduction of VAT instead of purchase tax, it made it very difficult for the Clan Motor Company to survive, and in 1974 it went into liquidation. After that, all the assets were sold off to a Greek Cypriot called Andreas Cassis, who was a truck manufacturer in Cyprus, and everything moved to Cyprus. Unfortunately, they then had the war between the Greeks and the Turks, and his factory unit ended up in no man's land. So production of the Crusader, or a variation on the Crusader, never happened in Cyprus. Whilst all the clan assets were in Cyprus, another set of moulds were made from a body shell to manufacture repair panels for damaged cars. These moulds eventually were bought by Peter McCandless, who in the early 1980s set up a company called Clan Cars in Newtonards, Northern Ireland, and he made an upgraded model of the Crusader. It wasn't called Crusader, it was just called a Clan, and we refer to it as the Irish Clan. That had pop-up headlights that were powered by TR7 motors, and a different front and rear end. The interior was also all Fiesta, Ford Fiesta. Again, that company went into financial difficulties and stopped trading mid-80s, but not before it had tried a completely different model called the Clan Clover. This was similar in design to the Crusader and the Irish Clan, but it had a mid-mounted Alfa Sud engine, whereas the Crusader and the Irish Clan both had Hillman imp engines with Hillman in. Sorry?
That was the Boxer engine.
It had the Boxer engine, yeah. Whereas the imp engine was produced or was used in all the other variations. The Clan Owners Club, they bought all the spares that were left in Cyprus, and we're still supplying spares to this day from that stock. Paul Hassauer has tried various other companies, but I think his most famous thing is obviously the Crusader.
So how many were made in all?
In total there was about 360 Crusaders. Nobody knows exactly how many. About 120 Irish Clans and 26 Clovers. There were also some body shells made from the other moulds that there were hopper and luff shells made. Mainly they were used for replacing damaged Crusader and Irish Clan shells, and people took them and made competition cars from them. So all in all, we think that an overall production of somewhere in excess of 500 cars.
And of those, how many are known to survive?
Well, the club has a full historic register, so we can trace the history of virtually every car that was made, and we think that there are probably in excess of 300, 350 still around, but it's difficult to tell how many of those are on the road. I would think at the moment we're coming up to perhaps 100, because there are a lot of cars that are at this moment under restoration.
Okay.
This car came to me about 12 years ago and had been sat in a garage for 20 years. That's the sort of thing that's turning up.
It has an imp engine.
It does.
Presumably it's all imp running gear.
Correct.
What about suspension and brakes? And is the engine standard imp? Is it bored out? Is it tuned?
The engine is Hillman Imp Sports Sunbeam Stiletto engine of around 52, 55 brake horsepower. It has twin Stromberg carburetors, so it is the upgraded imp engine.
But it's the standard 875.
It's the standard 875.
Okay.
The suspension is all Hillman Imp. It's got the swinging arm front suspension, the coil spring rear suspension. The Clan body, or the Crusader body shell, was basically made around the imp components so that they would all fit. The Irish clans, the ones that were manufactured came out of the factory as complete cars, all had 998 engines, which were the upgraded rally engine, as we call it. Although with the Irish clan, a lot of body shells were sold, so you will get cars that were used as replacement for rusty imps. So you will find 875 Irish clans, as you will find 998 Crusaders.
Okay.
They are after all 50 years old.
Okay, so bearing in mind that it's 50 years old, how safe is it?
Well, the cars are very safe. It's a very strong body shell. In fact, the car that was used in the Myra test, hitting a concrete wall at 30 miles an hour, after it had hit the wall, it reversed off the test rig and drove out of the warehouse.
Probably helped that the engine was in the back rather than the front.
Yeah. Apparently the Rolls Royce that followed it had to be towed out. At the time, the passenger compartment was allowed to distort 5 inches. The Clan actually distorted 3/4 of an inch, and the car that did the test was repaired and sold, and we believe is still in existence today.
Okay.
Another safety point on them, the competition cars had a fiberglass roll cage, which you might find strange these days with all the steel roll cages, but it was installed by having a round section rubber tube, paper tube that was laid in and then glass fibered over.
Right.
So many layers of glass fiber were used. To get homologation from the RAC, they got a shell out in the car park at Washington and put a skip on the roof. They then filled the skip full of water whilst the RAC scrutineer was there, and he approved the safety of the shell. So they are a very strong shell. I've known of cars, a friend of mine, Pete Richards, he still races them, and he had an accident and he took the front corner off the car. Now, had it been a metal car, that would have had to have been rejigged. But no, he just had a new front section made, fiberglassed it in, and off he went again.
So speaking of that, what are the realities of running one of these cars now? What's parts supply like? How much of it is bespoke and how much of it is imp?
Well, all the suspension and mechanical components are imp. Some parts are getting difficult to find, like the window winders are Viva HB, the door locks are Marina. They're starting to get very difficult to find, but the club has a reasonable supply of most parts, and we do have a lot of parts remanufactured. Door handles are Avenger, rear lights are Hunter.
Windscreens
are bespoke to the Clan, but we have them remanufactured.
And the body shell, can you provide all the panels?
Fiberglass panels are getting more and more difficult because the only moulds that are left are those of the Irish clan, and they're owned by one of our club members. He can have fiberglass panels remanufactured, but it is fairly simple for a decent fiberglass shop just to make a mould of that section and remanufacture a part. And with it being fiberglass, it's relatively easy to fiberglass it back in.
If you know what you're doing, it's quite straightforward.
But the Clan Owners Club tries to keep as many spares as possible, and we provide technical information and try to assist with people remanufacturing the parts. A lot of the strengthening sections inside the car are marine plywood, and we have templates of all those, so if people's cars have been sat out in the rain and suffered from a rot of the plywood, we can supply them with a template and they can have a new section cut.
So how long have you owned your car?
This one I've owned for about 12-15 years, but I do have another one as well which I've owned for about 20 years.
Okay.
And this is all from my misspent youth, where I tried to get one in the 1970s when they were being manufactured.
Okay, so you finally got there in the end.
I did, yes.
But it's great to chat to you about it, great to find out a lot more about the Clan Crusader, and thanks very much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Okay.